Let's kick things off with a question for anyone who grew up with grandparents from the old country. Do you remember the root cellar? In old TV shows and movies, we often see families stocking their cellars with heaps of vegetables for the winter. Even when it's freezing outside, the cellar stays cool, dark, and dry. The perfect environment for storing produce. A well-stored potato, for instance, can last for over 6 months down there. But a space that's cool, dark, and dry is often also airtight. And that's where deadly gases can gather, turning a storage space into a death trap. One day in 2014, in just a matter of minutes, 80-year-old Maria Cherysheva became an orphan. Maria lived in a small Russian town. Her father, Mikhail, was a respected law professor. Her mother was kind and gentle, and she had an older brother. They were a happy, loving family, the kind you'd see and feel a pang of envy for. On that fateful day, her father, Mikhail, went down to the root cellar to grab some potatoes for dinner. But a long time passed, and there was no sign of him. His wife put down what she was doing and went into the cellar to check on him. Terrifyingly, she, too, didn't return. The same chilling scene played out again with Maria's brother. He thought it was strange. How long could it take to get a few potatoes? Something must be wrong. So, he went down into the cellar alone. The truth was, the potatoes in the cellar had begun to rot badly. Mikhail, completely unaware of the danger, fainted the moment he entered and never regained consciousness. One by one, Maria's mother, brother, and father all succumbed after inhaling the toxic fumes. Soon after, Maria's grandmother noticed the silence and sensed that something was terribly wrong. She called a neighbor for help, but she was too anxious to wait. She rushed to the cellar herself, opened the door to try and air the place out, but she too collapsed in an instant. The only one left was 8-year-old Maria. She had no idea what had just happened. She wandered innocently to the cellar entrance to find the door open and her father, mother, brother, and grandmother lying motionless on the floor. When the police arrived, their investigation revealed the tragic truth: all four had died from toxic gas that had accumulated in the cellar. The news shocked everyone, and poor Maria was sent to live with relatives, passed between homes. This wasn't an isolated event. Back in 1979, a school in South London experienced a similar mass poisoning. A total of 78 students and staff were affected, all with the same symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, and stomach pain. A few of the students were in serious condition, suffering from high fevers, comas, and seizures. Thankfully, the illness only lasted about 5 days, and nearly everyone made a full recovery. But strangely, after their symptoms vanished, several of them reported, quite independently, that they started having hallucinations. Talk about a field trip. So what was the cause of this bizarre outbreak? The culprit, as it turns out, was hiding in plain sight. It was the potato. While it sounds unbelievable, the villain in all these stories is indeed the familiar, humble potato. And as it turns out, a potato that's gone bad can be seriously dangerous. Let's do a quick science dive. The toxin is called solanine. It's a glycoalkaloid poison found in species of the nightshade family, like potatoes, tomatoes, and eggplants. On one hand, solanine is the potato's personal bodyguard, fending off pests and fungi. On the other hand, for us humans, it's a pretty nasty piece of work. It's a powerful irritant to your digestive system. A mild case might just feel like you bit into something bitter and your stomach's not happy. But solanine also messes with your central nervous system, which can lead to acute cerebral edema, nausea, difficulty breathing, and in severe cases, coma and convulsions. Now, don't panic. A healthy, mature potato has very low levels of solanine, not nearly enough to hurt anyone. But as a potato starts to go bad, the concentration of this toxin skyrockets. So, when the potatoes in that cellar began to rot. This poison was released into the air, becoming a lethal gas that filled the confined space. Anyone who entered without realizing the danger would instantly inhale a high concentration of it, leading to fainting, respiratory failure, and, as we saw, death. You might be thinking, just cook the potatoes and you're fine, right? Well, not so fast. In that London school incident, the students had eaten cooked potatoes. Their symptoms appeared between 4 and 14 hours after the meal. An investigation revealed that the sack potatoes had been forgotten in a storage closet for a very long time. The cafeteria staff didn't think much of it and just cooked them up. There are a few telltale signs to know if your potato is packing extra solanine. If it starts to turn green or has already sprouted, that's a clear warning that solanine levels are on the rise. The greener the skin, the meaner the bean, or, the tuber. In the tragic case of Maria's family, her grandmother actually suspected the potatoes had spoiled. That's why she immediately opened the cellar door, trying to air it out. But even in that short time, she couldn't escape. That very same year, the news reported another case where 4 Siberians died from lethal potato fumes. In Krasnoyarsk, a city in central Siberia, 4 employees of a vegetable warehouse went to process some potatoes and never came back. Their boss, finding this odd, went to check on them. He was immediately hit with a pungent, irritating smell and found all 4 of his workers unconscious on the floor. It was the same horrible tragedy all over again. The Russian Investigative Committee later confirmed their deaths were caused by toxic substances released from rotting potatoes. These incidents served as a massive wake-up call. Never underestimate the power of a potato. If you're storing them for a long time in an enclosed space like a cellar, you absolutely must ventilate it before entering. Don't just rush in after opening the door. An old trick is to lower a lit candle. If it goes out, the oxygen is dangerously low. And if someone does get trapped, rescuers must be extremely careful, ensuring the space is fully aired out before going in to prevent the tragedy from repeating. Before this, I only knew not to eat sprouted potatoes. I had no idea the air around them could be just as dangerous. Research shows that ingesting 30 to 50 milligrams of solanine per 100 grams of potato is enough to cause illness. But it's not an exact science. Everyone's tolerance is different, which is why symptoms can range from mild to severe. Here are a few more cases from medical journals. In 1899, 56 German soldiers got solanine poisoning after a potato feast. They all recovered but experienced mild jaundice and partial paralysis. In 1925, a German family of 7 was poisoned by potatoes. 2 of them died. Survivors recalled that the potatoes were noticeably green and had a bitter taste, but the seasoning mostly covered it up. The first symptoms were nausea and extreme fatigue, so they all went to bed early. Horrifyingly, just hours before they passed, the 2 victims began gasping for air and eventually lost consciousness. In 1948, a 9-year-old girl was poisoned by solanine, but not from a potato. She found some strange-looking berries by the side of the road and, out of curiosity, decided to taste them. Soon after, she was at home with vomiting, abdominal pain, and difficulty breathing. Her parents rushed her to the hospital, but after 2 days of fighting for her life, she passed away. An autopsy showed severe bleeding in her stomach and intestines. Wild berries can look tempting, but some toxic compounds are lying in wait. A plant called the Jerusalem cherry, for example, is loaded with solanine. In times of famine, people don't have the luxury of being picky. There are reports from the Korean War in 1952 of large groups of people being poisoned by eating old, rotten potatoes. In just one region, 382 people were affected, 52 were hospitalized, and 22 died. The most severe cases resulted in death from cardiac failure within 24 hours of eating. So, after all this, are you ready to swear off spuds forever? Don't worry, we're not here to start a war on potatoes, just on potato poisoning. Beyond being mindful of how we store them, most larger-scale food producers that use potatoes test for solanine levels. You mostly have to worry about shady operations that might use spoiled potatoes for takeout orders. After all, if you get sick from takeout, you're more likely to blame the meat than the potatoes. For most people, the body can break down and excrete small amounts of solanine without much fuss. But if the concentration is too high, all those symptoms we talked about are on the table. So, what's the smart way to handle potatoes? First, store them in a cool, dark, and well-ventilated place. If you see a little bit of green, you can be forgiving. But you must be ruthless with the peeler. Shave off a generous layer around the green spot. Then, make sure to cook it thoroughly. But if it's seriously green or has more eyes than a spider, just toss it. Don't mourn the dollar you spent. It's not worth the medical bill. The older generation is wonderfully frugal and hates to waste food, which is an admirable virtue. But when it comes to health and safety, sometimes you just have to let it go. I'll share a personal story. I once took a potato that had started to sprout, cut it into pieces, and buried it in a little patch in my yard. I figured, hey, if it doesn't grow, it'll just become compost. No big loss. And you know what? It actually worked. I never got around to digging up the harvest, but it was a fun experiment. If you have a large pot and some space, you can find tutorials online. It's surprisingly easy, and in a few months, you might have your own homegrown potatoes. Well, that's our spudtacular story for today. What's the craziest food-related mishap you've ever had? Which foods do you give the sudee? Drop a comment and share the story. Catch you in the next